For most players, our perception of their overall success and ability is largely based on their production and success at test level, and quite often this is a fairly safe metric. And it's largely true that the best of the best always have historically produced at test level, and that those with mediocre or limited test records are usually good players but perhaps not quite up to the grade. Nonetheless, there are exceptions to this rule. Michael Bevan is among the game's greatest ODI cricketers of all time, but on his test credentials alone, his career could be judged as unfulfilled or perhaps mediocre. And I think no cricketer's career highlights the incongruence between test performance and ultimate career success as Ed Joyce. Ed Joyce made his Ireland debut in 1997 in a one-day match against Scotland where he made 60 runs off 100 balls, but this didn't count as a formal international as Ireland wouldn't be granted ODI status until 2006. He remained a constant in the Irish side until 2001, when his county commitments got in the way. Joyce began his county career in 1999 at Middlesex, having a consistent run in the team over his first few seasons, but didn't establish himself until 2002 when he made a massive improvement in his game and hit 1,166 runs at 53 in the county championship. This would be his first of many 1,000 plus run seasons. 2003 and 2004 would prove to be good seasons for him, but in 2005 he hit 1,668 runs at over 60 in the county championship, and he also made his return for Ireland, hitting 399 runs at the 2005 ICC Trophy and finishing as the competition's second top scorer. But that year he also became eligible to play for England via residency, and he'd decided many years beforehand that his ultimate ambition was to play for England due to the fact that England played Test cricket, whereas Ireland at the time played neither Test cricket, nor ODI cricket, nor T20I cricket. In 2005 he was selected for the England Cricket Academy and went on an England A tour of the West Indies in 2006. 2006 proved to be a major year for Joyce as he once again hit 1,000 runs in the county championship, and he made his international debut for England in a match that remarkably happened to also be the ODI debut of Ireland. Both Ed Joyce and his brother Dom Joyce made their ODI debuts, but Ed for England and Dom for Ireland. He continued to make international appearances for England in ODI cricket throughout 2007. This included his first international century, coming against Australia, and this ensured that he'd be selected in England's squad for the 2007 Cricket World Cup. He played 5 matches at the tournament, scoring 2 50s, but both of these came against associate nations, and by the end of his tournament, his ODI average was 27.7 from 17 matches. Joyce was 28 and not getting any younger, and coming from a relatively disappointing World Cup campaign, England looked to shake up both their squad and their management, dispensing with Duncan Fletcher in the process and many players in the team, including Ed Joyce. Joyce's returns for Middlesex in 2007 and 8 were okay, but he only averaged high 30s against second division bowling attacks, and by the end of the season he was 30 and nowhere particularly close to the England squad. Feeling that he needed a new start to perhaps get him back into international reckoning, he moved to Sussex. In 2009 and 2010, he averaged over 40 in both seasons, as Sussex yo-yoed between the first and the second division. And despite good performances, he still remained out of England reckoning. Joyce decided that he would publicly announce his intentions to return for Ireland when eligible. His given reasons for doing so included a deeper connection to Ireland than England, feeling that he had a lot to offer Ireland, and feeling that despite being in great form, he would be unable to showcase his skills on the international stage as England weren't selecting him. Implicit in this decision, though, was the understanding that this would effectively end any chance that Joyce ever had for playing Test cricket. In 2010, the likelihood of Ireland ever playing Test cricket within the next decade, or certainly within the rest of Joyce's playing career, was severely low. Whilst under normal eligibility rules, Joyce would have missed the 2011 World Cup, The ICC gave him special dispensation and he played his first game for Ireland in 6 years at the start of the 2011 World Cup. Nonetheless, despite being by far the biggest name and the best player in that Irish touring party, he had a relatively meagre tournament, averaging just under 30, and being overshadowed by the performance of Kevin O'Brien against England, Joyce's former team. Another poor series followed against Pakistan, but he'd soon find his groove throughout the World Cricket League. In 2013, he had another blockbuster season with Sussex, recording over 1,000 runs and averaging 65. He would also hit his first ODI 100 for Ireland against Pakistan and proved crucial in Ireland's first-class matches in the Intercontinental Cup. In 2014, he proved that he was simply getting better and better, hitting almost 1,400 runs and averaging 67 in the county championship. But despite proving that he was still one of the better first-class players in the world, he had no outlet to show this at the international stage. In 2015, he arrived at the World Cup as among the oldest players and continued to show his value, averaging 41 at a strike rate of almost 100, hitting a crucial 84 in Ireland's win over the West Indies and a match-winning 100 against Zimbabwe. His efforts that year in the Intercontinental Cup were also monumental, hitting 529 runs in just 4 innings, including 2 massive double centuries. In 2016, he once again hit over 1,000 runs in the county championship, but this time it would be his last, as he would retire from county cricket at the start of 2017. All in all, he hit 16,626 runs at an average of 48, with 42 hundreds. At the time of his county retirement, he was an absolute titan of the English domestic game, the Irish international game, but he had 0 test caps to his name. Crucially, however, he didn't retire from Ireland, even at 38 years old, with the hope that he would eventually be able to realise his test cricket dream. By now, Ireland had beaten full members at every single World Cup they'd been to, and were starting to form a far more professional domestic setup. Ireland's consistent success over the previous decade and recent changes to the domestic setup meant that they would finally be awarded Test status in June of 2017. And in October of 2017, it was agreed that Ireland would play a Test match against Pakistan at Malahide in May the next year. Finally, Joyce's lifelong goal had a date set to it. The career-long slog to plunder runs in county cricket and to play well enough with Ireland to prove without doubt that Ireland deserved Test status had finally become complete. No matter how long it seemed that it would forever remain elusive for Joyce to play Test cricket, all he had to do now was to remain fit, and his selection next May would be a nigh-on certainty. And indeed, when the day came for Joyce, who by now was almost 40, this was the culmination of 21 years of cricket for Ireland, 150 matches for Ireland, 4 years of cricket for England, 3 World Cups, and almost 20,000 first-class runs. And ultimately, the sheer determination that he had to achieve his goal. Joyce didn't set the world alight in his only Test match, scoring 4 and 43, but he will forever be the first man to face a ball in Test cricket for Ireland, the first man to hit a run for Ireland in Test cricket, and he will go down as probably the greatest Irish cricketer of all time. Indeed, one has to consider that the fact that Ireland has Test status at all can largely be attributed to, among others, Ed Joyce himself. One can look at his single Test and cast him aside as merely a footnote in Test cricket, but I'm steadfast in my belief that Ed Joyce remains among the most important cricketers of his time, and certainly among the greatest one-Test wonders, perhaps the greatest one-Test wonder. Because the fact that Joyce even got to play one Test for his country, one that when he began his professional career didn't even play ODI cricket and wouldn't for another decade, is astounding. Joyce had to traverse a path to Test cricket that very few have ever had to even consider, and had to navigate challenges that only a player of his calibre could overcome in his goal to play Test cricket. Indeed, he played 3 fewer Tests than Xavier Doherty, scored fewer runs than Akash Chopra, and had a worse average than Alex Doolan. But for Joyce, the goal was never to dominate Test level, because for the vast majority of his career, even attaining a single Test match looked like a truly insurmountable goal. Ultimately, Joyce playing Test cricket is one of the greatest individual triumphs seen in recent times in the cricketing world, in my opinion.